is insane. Happened very quickly, but who knows? We may do it again.
Yeah, I mean, this could be an annual thing, or you get better every year. You never know.
Yeah. The nice thing is that we've already got all the targets organized and listed and into when you can see them and how long they're visible for and all that sort of stuff. So if we did decide to do it again, it would be not as complex as the first time. And we are certainly planning on doing a similar program starting in March, but it's still in the works, so I won't reveal too much about it.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think I've even asked you, John, to help out yet. So that's how in the works it is.
I would totally be welcome to help out.
Cool, sounds good. I'll let you know.
Of course, there'll be a baby just crying in the background the whole time.
Yes, if anyone has any guests for John's baby's name, he may give a hint later. We'll see, but please add them in the chat. So welcome everybody. It is Thursday. We're on our 9th of 10 sessions for Explore the Universe, which is pretty exciting. I wanted to first apologize because it seems that for the second week in a row now, I've forgotten to update the email that goes out to remind you all that we have ETU, and it is 4 weeks out of date now. So if you do need the targets, and you usually get them from that email, you'll be able to find them on the ETU online site, which I'll post in the chat. I have added all of the targets. There it is. I've added all the targets for previous sessions, and I'll add the ones for the last session within the next week or so. And so if you need them, that's where they are. My apologies for getting it wrong.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that some people are coming pretty close to being eligible for their certificate at this point. So people that have been observing regularly and documenting their progress, most importantly, it'd be interesting to tally it up and just see how close you are, because I'm guessing that some people will have crossed that line.
Yeah, we will. So, maybe we'll do a poll next session and just see how everyone's doing. I like Mary Claude, you just said that you're nowhere near all those targets, and I too am like definitely not anywhere close. But it'd be neat to see how many of you have been out observing more than you would have without the program and all that sort of stuff. So maybe we'll do a survey at the end of this all. For today, we're going to talk a little bit. We only have 8 targets to look at, and they're a bit odd. They're targets that you don't hear about too often, which is part of the reason that I left them for the end, because I was kind of like not as excited about them. But there's some really cool stuff in here. One of them for sure, I know John knows about, that's the double cluster that we're going to be looking at. And so we thought we'd start off maybe by talking about the telescope that John was testing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can talk about that. So
yeah.
So I spent the last week pretty much working on an in-depth telescope review for a friend, because they were wondering, hey, my husband and son are looking for a telescope for Christmas. I've only got a budget of a couple $100, and what should I get? And can you review one for me? And so I put a lot of thought into this. And one of the issues with this year is that a lot of the telescopes, because of COVID and manufacturing shortages, have effectively doubled in price. And like the telescope that Jenna and I used last year for our video series, it actually tripled in price. I paid $129 for it, and that might have been on sale at the time, but not that much on sale. And now it's almost $350, and that was a little 4 or 5 inch Newtonian. And so that's really sad for me. That I think a lot of people are now going and they're buying telescopes that really aren't decent. Like a lot of people are buying this one. I can show you. They're buying this one thinking that it's good for outer space, but for like 4 or 5 reasons, it's not. It's got a 45-degree diagonal, which is really for terrestrial use. It's on a camera tripod, which is really not steady enough for space. And it's only got a 60 diameter aperture, which is pretty small. So if you're looking at a telescope that small, you're better off getting binoculars, right? But what if you want a telescope? Like for me, I just like telescopes, and I actually find telescopes about an order of magnitude easier to use for finding objects in the sky than binoculars. And there's a couple things I look for in someone commenting that they can't hear me. Can you hear me okay?
I think they're talking about Celestron customer service. So don't worry, you're coming through okay.
Okay, I'm coming through okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I look for in a telescope. If you're talking with someone that only has a budget of a couple $100, you want to get as much aperture as you can, and that affects the resolution of what you're going to be able to see. So are you going to be able to see like detail on the surface of the moon? Are you going to able to see that division in Saturn's rings? And so resolution enables you to see detail, and that comes from aperture. And a lot of the telescopes are long and skinny, and they have small apertures, and that's not so good a lot of the time. So the telescope that I think this year sort of takes the cake for around a couple $100. So I actually picked this up at Costco for $300, but apparently it goes on sale all the time. And in the States, it's still below $200. And this is the Celestron 100 AZ. And now there's a 70, 80, and 90 AZ. The difference is those ones are long, skinny ones. And so they've got high focal ratios. It's sort of like looking through a straw, whereas this one's more like looking through a toilet paper tube. You've got a lot more sky that you can see. So this is, the focal ratio on this is low. It's fast telescope as far as beginner telescopes go. So 6.6 versus those other telescopes that are 11 to 13. And high focal ratio telescopes like this one is f13, almost f14. It's extremely hard for a beginner to use, because even looking for the moon, you've got to hit it straight on. And that could be a challenge. So you want those focal ratios to be low. This one's 6.6. That's perfect. If you want magnification, use eyepieces, use Barlow's, but the telescope innately should be able to pull back and give you a wide field, which is pretty rare.
Telescopes are one of those things where I've had them explained, like all the numbers explained to me 1,000 times over, and I can recommend pretty good, I can give good recommendations, but I have such a hard time when you're like, this should be 6 and this should be 13. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, what does that mean to my eyeballs?
Yeah. I mean, there's fast and slow, right? So fast means you gather a lot of light quickly. And so that's like Newtonians are mostly F4. That's perfect. Nice and fast. So this is a fast refractor. So 6 that's pretty fast. F13, or like those long tubes, they're slow. And that gives you high magnification, but a lot harder to find things and generally lower resolution.
Okay. Yeah. I still have a hard time. I don't know if maybe it's that I'm used to cameras and F being f-stops, and how big the aperture is, and therefore smaller f-stops being letting in more light. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you're just changing the ratio in a different way. So
okay.
Yeah, so with a telescope, the aperture is generally fixed and you're changing the focal length. With the camera, I think you're changing the aperture.
And you can change the focal length a bit depending on the lens you have.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just find it very confusing. But
yeah, so
yes, I'm glad that one is a good one.
Yeah, so low is good.
Okay.
Low is good. F6.5, good. Okay. I know that's probably the most complicated aspect. But the other thing is the mount. So this is an alt-azimuth mount. So that basically means up, down, left, right. The mounts that are equatorial, I've found are not good for beginners, because at this price point, they're really, really glitchy. So those are the mounts that are inclined to match the axis of the Earth, and they usually have the long slow motion controls, and you need to point them at the North Pole and all this fancy stuff to make them work. So yeah, so those I feel like are outside. I've owned a bunch of them, the beginner ones, just as tests, and I pretty much thrown them out. Because you'll be using the slow motion controls, and then you'll hit a wall, and you like literally can't push the telescope to the target. And you're like, why?
No.
Yeah, so just below like $1,000, those get really painful. Yeah, so again, this is 100 AZ. 100 is the aperture, so the diameter of the lens. AZ, it stands for alt-azimuth, and that's just up, down, left, right. And then you've also got a lot of things that make this telescope good: a 90-degree diagonal instead of the 45. So this is great. It's pretty easy. I usually use it sitting down in a chair. And it's just sort of at that chair height. And the mount's fairly stable. So So that's that. Someone, you have a
There are
question?
a few questions. First of all, Dave Chapman was asking if it comes with a Celestron bullseye finder.
Yeah, so it comes with a new type of basically Telrad, and I can pop it off here because it's without spilling my coffee.
I believe in you. You can do it.
This is really neat.
Ooh.
And I should be able to point it at my face here, and you'll see.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, so it's a really nice bullseye there. It sort of moves around a little bit if you move your head, but I mean, this telescope's so wide field anyway that you're by the time you get to the scope, if your target is in here, your target's going to be in there, assuming you've gone through the process of aligning them. So just today, actually just an hour ago, I posted a 16-minute review of this telescope where I go over everything, unboxing, assembly, setup, and then I actually put an iPhone on it and go through 5 or 6 targets and Saturn and whatnot. I didn't get the moon because we're nearing new moon right now and it wasn't up. But even galaxies like M81 and M82, they were super easy to find in this scope, just because 1, it was dark skies, 2, you've got the aperture for it. And because the scope is fast, that means things are brighter as well. So it was great. It was great for galaxies.
I'm trying to find your channel. Is it Learn to Stargaze?
Yeah, Learn to Stargaze. Or you can just search the Celestron 100 AZ telescope review. Someone's asking if I've tried the Unistellar EV scope. I think that's that one that doesn't have an eyepiece, or you just look in and you're looking at a screen. From what I can tell, that's pretty much a scam. I know it's a couple grand, and you're supposed to set it down, and it's supposed to work, but that's not much better than this iPhone on this scope would do a lot better than that whole package. So it's just not those sort of all-in-one scopes that just take the pictures for you and you control them from your phone. Getting good pictures is sort of still in the realm of spending $4,000 and putting all the pieces together separately.
So I don't know about that scope, but there are a couple telescopes where you just plop them on the ground and they figure it all out themselves, and then they can live stack images and stuff like that. Which Stellina, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, so I think that one too. I don't think they're there yet in terms of, I don't think they're better than an iPhone on what you've got for a scope.
Yeah, and I guess my point was going to be they're pretty good. They're not bad for outreach and for making space accessible. So for people that can't look through eyepieces or don't have as good dark perception or whatever, they do, or in this world where you can't look through eyepieces, maybe they're good for that sort of stuff too.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to learn how to use a telescope and observe the night sky for yourself, those might.
So there is a very newish solution to that. And so I'm going to do that from now on for outreach. I'm not going to have people look through my scope for most stuff. And it's the ASI Air. And what that is a camera that you can use the professional grade astronomy camera or whatever camera you have in your telescope, and you control everything from your phone, and it live stacks on the phone, and it'll also do your darks and flats and all your calibration. And then by the time you set it up, and then by the time it's time for outreach, a 60-second exposure will give you a full color picture of a galaxy or the Veil Nebula or anything.
That's cool.
So you can just tell it, go to the next target, 60-second exposure, Andromeda Galaxy, 60-second exposure, Veil Nebula, 60-second exposure, and M81, M82.
That's cool.
In color on your iPad or iPhone, and that's called the ASI Air Pro.
ASI Air Pro.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so it's so smart, it won't let you not hate your target. So it does what's called plate solving. So as it slews to each target, it analyzes the sky and makes sure it's lined up. So it takes a picture and so I think for me, that'll be the new outreach.
That's cool. So
the non-photons to eyeballs.
For those who are curious about this stuff, it is $404.99. Does that sound right? That's what Ontario Telescope says.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, I guess it's a good thing for outreach. Yeah.
And lazy astrophotographers.
And lazy astrophotographers. For those who
Yeah.
are just starting out, it's probably not, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. But you know.
No, it's for people that already have the imaging scope and they want to use it for outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also other people who do cool outreach stuff. Like there's and I'll just plug Astronomy by the Bay right now. So they have a Sunday night astronomy show where, depending on the weather, they'll do live streams of the sky. And what they've been doing since the world shut down and we aren't allowed to look through telescopes anymore is they have been hooking up video camera eyepieces to their telescopes and then plugging that into a monitor and putting the monitor on a music stand and letting people walk by and look at it that way.
Yeah,
which is
I
one way
love
to
that
do it.
idea. I love it.
It's so cool. It's so clever. It's great. So they're on at Astronomy by the Bay on YouTube and on Facebook. Good follow.
Yep.
Okie dokie. Shall we talk about targets?
Sure.
Okay. Well, this week we have, so I will just remind everyone again that since we are on our second last week and the Thursday after next will be our last one. If you have any targets that you want us to go over or ones that you missed or highlights from the upcoming winter season that you really want to see, please let us know. We're going to go over a couple extra targets next week in 2 weeks that will sort of carry you into the winter season. So things like Orion and M42 and the Pleiades, I think, is on there. So a couple of those targets will help carry you through the winter a little bit. But if there's anything in particular you want to see, please let us know. For now, I'll mention that the only 2 lunar targets for this time, this is your reminder that the phases of the moon count. And we have 2 lunar phases this time. It's on the Google Calendar if you've joined us on our Google Calendar. And so they're the waxing crescent moon, which is 3 days after the new moon. The new moon's on Friday. So you can see it either on the 19th of October or the 20th of October. Since it is a waxing crescent, I'll bring it up in Stellarium. It will be, let me share my screen. That would help. It'll be in the evening before or just after sunset. So right now let's go to the 19th. There we go. And back a little bit.
Yeah. And it's technically waxing crescent for, there's a good 5 days you can see it before it becomes first quarter. And
yeah, although on the Explore the Universe thing, it says you have to see it within 18 hours of its actual phase.
Oh, okay.
So you have to get pretty specific about it. I'd say you have enough wiggle room to choose either of the 2 days, but just a heads up. So either the 19th or the 20th, it'll be west after sunset. So it'll be following the sun right after sunset. There it is. Nice little crescent. That's a fun one to see just because it's so very small.
Yeah, there's actually I call it the Young Moon Challenge. So if you can get it, because if you click on the moon, you can see how old the moon is, usually in percentages or something. And yeah, so it'll say, I guess it's
what
not
percent illuminated it is or something, right?
It looks like you're missing some details there, but oh yeah, 4.7 days old, right there.
Oh yeah, 4.7 days old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So like, there's a little competition where you can say, hey, I've seen a 1 day old moon, or I've seen an 18-hour old moon, or whatever, and it's also, sort of like bragging rights.
Yeah, there's contests to see who can photograph the youngest moon, and I think it's down to like 12 hours or something like that old. It's really, 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 really hair thin right after sunset, maybe even while the sun is still up. Like, it's unbelievable. And it also matters in some religions. I believe in Islam, it matters a lot in terms of like when you end certain fasts, I think. So there's a couple religions where it matters, and it's just kind of cool. Like, it's neat to see how young you can see it. So that's
you also get earth shine there too, which is important to point out.
Yeah, you can't really tell in this. I mean, you can kind of tell. But what John means by earth shine is that the moon, when it's only lit up by a tiny little bit, the moon is always constantly lit a little bit by the light that's reflecting off of the earth back onto the moon. So the sun comes down, hits the earth. Some of that light bounces back and lights up the moon, but it's not very much. And so you can see it when the moon is very, very, very thin, because the light from the sun on the moon doesn't overwhelm it. And it shows up nicely in photos and in real life too, if you want to actually see it, like with your normal eyes. So that's our first lunar phase. That's the 19th, 20th. And then the next lunar phase is the waxing crescent, which is about a week later. Let me check my schedule. It's exactly a week later. So it's Monday or Tuesday, or the 26th or 27th. And so we'll just jump ahead to, I'm going to zoom out. We'll jump ahead to the 26th. and it's going to be in the opposite direction. I'm sorry, when I said wax,
You
did I
mean
say
gibbous.
waxing gibbous? Sorry, I meant waxing
Yeah,
gibbous.
I was like,
My brain's a little tired these days. So this one we've certainly seen before when we've been looking for craters and stuff like that. So this is just a reminder to make sure you note it down. You won't be able to see the earth shine in this one because it's all too bright. The nice part about this moon is that you'll be able to see it for a lot longer. So if you wanted to observe it, you have until like 2:30 in the morning when it sets. So you have a long time, whereas the moon the week before when it was a waxing crescent, you only have like an hour after sunset to be able to see it.
A couple hours.
Yeah.
Depending on the day.
Depending on the day. So those are your 2 targets for the moon this next coming 2 weeks. They're pretty simple. Easy
peasy unless there's clouds.
Yes, unless there's clouds.
We have plenty. Although today is gorgeous. It was 18 here in Halifax.
Ooh, that's really nice. It's 8 here.
Right now. Woo.
Yeah, it's a little chilly. And it was raining and sunny earlier. So it's been a weird day. Yes, thank you for the clarification in the chat about the moon. And there's also, so Atul Dave or Dave Atul, I'm not sure which way your name is around, mentioned to us that the early, that breaking fast for, I think probably Ramadan, and he mentioned Ramzan, but I think it's Ramadan, is when they see the first crescent. So that's where it comes in.
And if it's cloudy, you stay hungry.
Tough luck. Yeah. Yeah. So if it will, I mean, this season, unfortunately, this season is a little cloudy. So you do what you can with the observing you have. Dress warm, that too. It's so cold out there at night. So just stay safe and do what you can. Yeah. And so that's it for lunar targets. I'm going to take us back to now because what day is it? The 15th. Because there's no moon and the other targets we have are easier to see when there's no moon. So we have 2 constellations, a double star, and then 3 open clusters to look at. I also know I called this the Zodiacal light, but we talked a lot about the Zodiacal light 2 times ago, so I'll mention it again. But it's one of the extra targets. Like, it's special because you can only really see it for a brief period of time. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the constellations. John, jump in anytime. I know there's no moon things right now, but you can please feel free to interrupt.
Yeah, sure. So you want to turn the constellations on there? And I think
I was going to start off without them because, you know, there's no lines in the real sky and we can kind of do it just to find Perseus.
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, Perseus is, it's below, I think of it, it's always, to me, it's a fall constellation, even though, you know, you stay up a little later and you'll see it. And it's found below, I think of it as below Cassiopeia.
That's fair. I was going to use the only way I know how to find the sky, find my way through the sky, which is the big asterisms, because they're the easiest ones to see. So we can still see the summer triangle, even though it's October, because of the way that the Earth spins, etc. So we have the summer triangle up, and to the west of the summer triangle, a lot harder to see, especially if you're in the city, but still possible, is the autumn square, which we saw last time. That's the body of Pegasus. And then we also looked at Andromeda last time, right? That's the thing that looks like the leg of Pegasus when he's upside down. There's his head.
Hockey stick.
Hockey stick. Yeah, true. Does look like a hockey stick. So Andromeda points directly at Perseus, which is here. Yeah. And Perseus looks like a wishbone. There we go. Wishbone Perseus, sort of. And you're right, it is directly under Cassiopeia. So if you want to use Cassiopeia instead, or maybe a combination of Cassiopeia and the horse to figure out where it is, because you can point at it with both, you can do that. So Perseus, relatively easy to find. For those who were watching the Perseid meteor shower in August, this is the constellation that we said all of the meteors emanate from or look like they're coming from. We didn't tell you how to find it then because it wasn't really important because you weren't supposed to be looking at it. You're supposed to be looking elsewhere in the sky, as you do with meteor showers. But there it is. He holds Medusa's head. The next constellation is not one of my favorites, I will admit, and you do have to stay up. Oh no, you can see it now. But it's hard to find. I have a hard time with this one. I've never bothered to try to find it because it's kind of
like a one brightish star in it.
Yeah,
it's like a one trick
pony.
Yeah, it's like Canis Minor, like 2 stars, really. I guess even that one has, I think Procyon's in that one, so that's pretty bright. But this one is like, what? Like, does anyone?
Yeah.
Do you know the
Does
name of
anyone
that
even
star?
care about those stars? Yeah,
I
I
bet
don't know.
Dave Chapman knows the name of that star.
I'm sure he does, and I'm
Yeah,
sure he's kind of
Aries.
grumpy that we're kind of being mean to it right now. I'm going to take us a little bit later in the night just so we can see things clearly. Okay, so it's a zodiac constellation, and I'm sorry to anybody who's an Aries out there, but it's Aries, and I'm sure Aries is a lovely zodiac to be, but it's
Yeah,
an
but
annoying.
they probably think they're Aries, but if you actually put their birthday
Yes,
in and figure
they're
out
going to
where the
be
sun was in, they're
something
somewhere
else.
else.
They're either, I think this
Yeah,
is Pisces or Taurus or something like
yeah,
that.
you're
Regardless.
probably actually Pisces.
Yeah. So the ecliptic, I'll show you where the ecliptic runs through. There's the ecliptic. This is the line the sun travels along. And these are all the zodiac constellations that it hits. Aries is up here. It's this little line that is theoretically a ram. I've never tried to find it, but I would say that the only real like the easiest way to find it right now is to wait for the Pleiades to arrive. There are the Pleiades. They're a lovely little group of stars that we'll look at in our next session. They look like a tiny mini dipper, and they're really easy to find because they're like the only stars around that are that bright and that close together. They're like super, super tiny. So find the Pleiades, and for now, find Mars, because Mars is bright, it's big, it's super wonderful to see. And draw a line between them, and Aries is in the middle of that line straight up.
Yep. So I usually find this stuff. I mean, usually you're not looking for Aries, you're looking for a triangulum because you're looking for the triangulum galaxy.
True.
But I use the same method that you use to find the Andromeda galaxy, which is start at Cassiopeia, use the right side, and hop down to the bright star in Andromeda. Forget the name
So
of
like
that
down
star.
to
Yeah, that one.
that's Mirak.
Yeah. And then if the skies are dark enough, hop down, see if you can see triangulum, and then you'll sort of get your bearings down there. So that's how I do it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's a more sustainable way to do it because Mars will not always be right here. It will keep moving. And so my way of finding it only lasts for a couple of months, if that. So if you want to go out some other time and see it, use John's method of bouncing around from Cassiopeia down to
the big W.
Almost forgot it. The W down to Andromeda, and then down from there in kind of an arc to try to find the bright star. It's
what's that called again? What's that bright star called?
Hamal.
Hamal, okay.
And it's a magnitude 2, so it's pretty bright. It's just that
there's
nothing else around it that's interesting. So those are the two constellations, and now we get to talk about the more fun stuff. While we're here, and while you're looking for Perseus, there is a very pretty open cluster around Perseus. Here's the tricky part. It's listed in Explore the Universe as Malot 20. But if you search for Malot 20, here's my search window. Oh, it does work. Never mind. Okay, for a while for me, it didn't work. Excellent. Great. I had to search Alpha Persei to make it work. It's Alpha Persei being the brightest star in Perseus, the one that Andromeda points to. It's an open cluster around that star, so this whole area here. It's quite wide. So if you look at the width, it's about 5 degrees across. So almost the whole field of your binoculars when you're looking at it. So I would recommend looking at this one with binoculars and not with a telescope. And I'm almost out of battery.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, so definitely use binoculars. I'll be 1 second, sorry. John, have you seen it before?
Yeah, I've seen it, I think, working through Gary Sedonik's binocular highlights. I always mess up his name. Anyway. Saronic, yeah. Because like you say, even I find it's, as you get north to Cassiopeia and look at the double cluster up there, through a telescope, the stars are sort of so dense anyway, it's almost hard to know where the regular space ends and the clusters begin. But with binoculars, it's a lot more obvious. Mm-hmm. And if your skies are really dark, then you can see these without anything.
Oh, that's nice.
Right. So you can sort of make them out, especially the double cluster that you'll talk about in a minute. You'll see them without binoculars or anything. And, but yeah, so I would say naked eye and binoculars are the best way to see these clusters, the one you're talking about now, and then the double cluster.
Yes, that leads us nicely into our double cluster, which again, I've never seen before and I haven't heard about before, but when John mentioned it, he was like, yeah, the double cluster, no problem. So that is, hold on, let me get the name right. NGC 869 and 884. It's a double open cluster. So again, you'll see the globular clusters like M22, those ones that are like super dense and very bright in the middle, and like they look like a diffuse fuzzy blob, whereas the open clusters are lots of individual points of light. So these are two open clusters that you can actually kind of see in stellarium now. They're about, I've been using this bottom star of the Cassiopeia W and Murphak, which is the brightest star in Perseus. They're about halfway between there. And you can see a very faint little fuzzy spot.
Well, zoom in. You have to make sure, because some people can, when you're using stellarium, you don't want to confuse it with the Heart and Soul Nebula, which is to your
left.
True.
It's over here.
Yeah, because sometimes I even got that wrong when I was making a star map once for one of my books. And I had that because I was like, oh yeah, there it is. And so I pointed an arrow at it. But really that Heart and Soul Nebula that's right to your left, that's one of the best photographic targets for not even telescopes, but like if you've got a DSLR with a zoom lens and a star tracker, like that is what you want to point it at and do, some of your beginner astrophotography with.
Right.
But again, it's not, so you've sort of got a double nebula and then a double cluster.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so you want to make sure you're seeing points of light and not clouds. And that you're looking in the right spot in terms of it is, I mean, if you draw a line, I'll draw no, that's not what I wanted. I'll draw the line directly from Murphak to there. It is directly on that line. Whereas the Heart and Soul is off a little bit. So give that a shot, see if you can find it. And as mentioned, you should be able to see this, as John mentioned, you should be able to see this without binoculars if you have really dark skies.
Yeah. And someone's asking what the ecliptic is, and that's just basically the plane of the solar system. So it's the path the sun takes, and you'll find all the planets near the ecliptic.
Yeah.
And the zodiac are the constellations that are bisected by the ecliptic.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw. I think it was Janine mentioned. Can you throw up the binocular view, or the binocular circle? So that's what you would see with the binocular field of view for the double cluster. But while we're at it, let's use that to look at Murphak as well. So that's where you get these stars scattered throughout the view. This is where I find open clusters to be one of the harder targets, because it's sort of like this, how do I know if I'm looking at an open cluster or just a bunch of stars, which I'm sure I've mentioned before. This is one that I'd find hard, but for sure, because Murphak is so bright, it's magnitude 1.75, that if you have that in the view, if you've hopped over there from Andromeda, you know that that's the brightest star around in the view, and you know that the stars around it will then be an open cluster.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. And again, a telescope like this should be able to fit a lot of it in, because this telescope with a 20 or 28 degree or 28 or 20 millimeter eyepiece is going to be fairly wide. So yeah, this is only 33 times magnification with the 20, and if it's 28, it's even lower. It's like 20, 22, or just my binoculars, my zoom binoculars and this telescope have the same magnification if I use like a 30 millimeter in this, and I've zoomed in all the way on my binoculars. So
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think I found, because my binoculars are only 8 times magnification, and I have the Celestron next star is 6SE. If that's right, I don't know. Anyway, it's a 6-inch Celestron.
Your telescope is f11, I think, which means your view is tight.
It is very tight. So what I was going to say was that I find that I kind of want a telescope with a wider view. There's some really great things that my telescope can see, but I had friends out the other night, and I was showing them the planets, which was great. And then I was kind of like, oh, I kind of want to show them the coat hanger, but I don't have a telescope that would work with, and I didn't have my binoculars at the time. And so I was kind of like, yeah, I wouldn't mind one with a larger view, or a larger field of view. And at first I had been kind of like poo-pooing it. Like, of course, everyone wants to see stuff super close up. But that's obviously not the case. Yeah. I'm gonna, okay, so we've answered the ecliptic live, got the double star. And is there a list where the targets are mentioned? So all the targets are mentioned on rasc.ca/ETU online, and they're broken up by the sessions we've addressed them in. And there are also links to all of the old videos there. And so you'll be able to go back and look through. They all have instructions on how to find each of the targets mentioned in the video, summarized in text, if you don't want to rewatch the whole video. Hopefully that helps. Yep. Okay, is it our last? It is. Our last of the targets for this week is a tricky one. It's a double star, John's favorite.
Yay.
This one is in Cygnus. I'm going to turn off the lines again. This one's in Cygnus, which is, again, one of our constellations that's over here. Maybe I'll move us back by an hour. It's in the Summer Triangle. We've looked at it before. This one, I found this one kind of tricky to visualize as to where it was. So we've got, I'll throw up the lines for now, but here's Cygnus. Again, the body of Cygnus, the swan, extends through the Milky Way and into the middle of the Summer Triangle, which is here. What we're looking for, in the written description, I said the right-hand arm. I meant like the right hand from our view. So that would be this one, or the one on the west. So we're going to head along the arm and find these two stars, which make up essentially like its fingertips. These two stars, there's a third bright star kind of over here, which would throw me off. It's throwing me off generally for finding this double star. By the way, this is Cygnus, or 16 Cygni, the double star's name. The double star is basically in a line back from these two stars towards Cygnus. It's this little one here, 16 Cygni. It's magnitude 6-ish, so it's not super bright, but it is almost exactly the same distance from this star to this star as it is from that star to 16 Cygni, but you might get lost by looking at this one down here, which is not what we're aiming for. Oh, go away. There we go. It's Theta Cygni, which is also a double star, but not the double star we want. So if you can hop along Cygnus from the body out to the arm, and then again out to the little hands, if you put the hands at the far edge, right-hand edge of your binoculars, you should be able to see 16 Cygni on the left.
And were you able to attempt this from the city? No problem?
I haven't been to the city in forever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I like it up here. So actually that's a lie. I was back a couple weeks ago, but I don't try to observe in the city that often because I know that I have the option to come and see the dark skies. So I would guess this would be harder to see. We can up the pollution. If anyone's tried to observe this in the city, please do let us know. Let's up the light pollution.
Now I know you could see it with binoculars. The challenge, from the city, but I think the challenge would be finding it from the city might be a little tough just because the two reference stars you're using are, I think for me, they're below sort of easy viewing from downtown Halifax.
They would be, I think they would be really hard to find just with your naked eye from the city. So you'd have to I find in the city, you can see the cross relatively easily. So you'd have to almost like jump from here. The unfortunate thing is that it's not a straight shot. You have to do this little like V shape.
Yeah, again, you'll see the stars in the binoculars from the city, though.
Yeah, so you'd have to find the cross stars of the binocular to then move over and hop over to the hand. And
then what's the separation of those? Or like, is it a tight double or is it fairly loose?
Oh no, it's a tight double. So you do in the Explore the Universe document, they recommend mounting your binoculars on a tripod to be able to see it, or using a telescope.
Yeah.
So that it's a tight double, which I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, like you might, if you have really good vision and like the world's steadiest hands, you might be able to see it through binoculars. But it's pretty tight. The separation, if we can measure it with this little baby thing, is less. It's like half a degree, half a degree, whatever that is. Super tiny. So you'll have to definitely use a tripod for that.
Is that right? Half a degree is like
is
like the moon.
It's half of half a degree.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's, I assume, because I
didn't quite see it there.
So if you've got, wait a second. Half a degree would be here.
Oh yeah. So you're 30 arc seconds.
Yeah. So you're 30. Yeah, it's like 30. Yeah, 30
or 50
arc seconds, something like that. Super, super, super small, super tight together. Instead of arc minutes.
Yeah.
So they are squishy, but give it a shot. There are better double stars into the fall and winter that we haven't covered. So if you don't see every single double star of the ones that we've told you, you can go and look in the wintertime and still be able to see some.
Yeah.
The joy of the Explore the Universe program. So the way that we've set it up, and I'll just stop for a second because that's it for our targets for the most part, but I'll stop for a second. Yes, half of an arc. Is it half of an arc second, Norm? Or is it a half an arc minute, Carlos? I'm not sure. debate lively in the comments. But yeah, I guess the problem, so the way that the program is set up, and maybe I'll share the actual program outline right now. You only have to see half the objects that are listed in the program. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just gonna, there we go. You only have to see half the objects that are listed. And so we've gone through over half the objects in this program, which means that if you've gone and seen every single one, you'll get your certification. But that doesn't mean that you've seen, there are still another another 50% of the objects that are available for you to see, should you choose to want to observe in the winter and spring. So for example, we've gone through all of these constellations. We've shown you how to find all of these constellations, as well as Pegasus, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Aries, and Perseus. So I did my best to fit in as many constellations as we can. We have more than 12. We are also going to show you Taurus and at least Orion next time as well. So you'll get a really good spread of the constellations, but you only need 12 out of the 24. Mm-hmm. And so it goes with all of the other objects as well. So you have to see 4 of the 8 lunar phases. I've tried to give you as many as possible because for some reason that's one that I always forget. I always forget that you have to observe the lunar phases at all. And then same goes again for the lunar basins in Maria. We tried to give you again, I think almost all of these. And we did as much as we could with the craters as well, because you don't need to see them spread out through the year. You can see them at any time at that particular phase of the moon. We are limited, however, on our deep sky objects. You can only see those at the certain times of the year. And so we did our best to show you the ones that are in summer and the ones that are in autumn. There aren't as many in autumn. So here are the 2 that we just showed you today. And we'll show you a couple more from winter. But there are lots of other options if you want to go out and see them. I think we went through, again, all of the summer and most of, oh no, we didn't do spring, but we did most of the summer constellations with you guys. So
you got a few spring, because we talked about the stuff around Leo.
Yes, yeah.
Primarily spring.
Yeah, we squished a few in early on, but it was hard because it was also early, and so we didn't want to just overwhelm you and be like, hey, your first deep sky object is one that no one's ever heard of, or one that was not terribly famous and is pretty hard to find. So as you go on through this, and same goes with the double stars. There are a lot of options for double stars. We've done what we can with the summer and the autumn and winter ones. There are other spring ones that you can see, so you can always go back and add those in.
And someone's asking, where's this document? Just
this document is, so it's in a couple places. It's on Explore the Universe, its proper page, but if every single thing that you need is at ETU Online. So I should have reviewed this before.
I never even type it in. I always just Google ETU and it's it's the first link. So then I just click.
Yeah. So this has every single session's targets and how to find them, although that's a slightly different, anyway, whatever. And it has the links to the YouTube videos. It has the links to our Discord. It has the link to the Google Calendar. It has the workbook. So that's a logbook. Then you have the program tool. So this is the Explore the Universe. There you go. There's John's. Heyo. Hey. There's the Explore the Universe program guide in French. So this brings you to the main page, which has all the documents that you could possibly need. It has English, French, logbook pages, application form, everything like that. It's got links to our books and links to different videos and articles, and it's got websites that might help you as well, spotting the station, stuff like that. Yep. So everything that we've mentioned is on this website.
And it's pretty much, and it's pretty much everything we've mentioned is actually covered in this workbook, including how to spot the station and all that stuff. Not to plug it, but if you're looking for a simplified where you don't have to open 6 or 7 documents, hypothetically, you could use this and then the application form. And then what you would do is just take a picture of each page in this book and then email it in. And that would be your log.
I'm going to also plug ours, which I forgot to even link on that website. And then so I will link it as soon as we get off this call. So here is the RASC one. So it's really 2 different audiences. If you're a brand new astronomer and you're looking to keep track of the stuff that you see, but you want a hand as to what it would actually look like in the sky, John's book is perfect. It has pictures of everything and all that sort of stuff. This is another version that we have online, which the PDF is available to download if you just want to use the PDF and just print it all off. But this is bound and everything. And it has, so it's for sale in our store. I'm just going to open it so I remind myself to put on the website.
So how much is the workbook in the store?
Your workbook? Right, because we have your workbook in the store too. I forgot to link that one. John's workbook is available from us if you'd like to buy it from us at a slightly discounted
Ooh, it's on
price.
sale. I love it.
It's on sale. $10.
$10.
So if you're looking for, actually, even in general, if you've got a new observer in your life who's looking for something for the holidays, these are good books to start with. And John has a bunch of other books as well.
Yeah. So the most fun one, and that Dave Chapman and I worked on, is 50 Things to See on the Moon. And so we just had a blast doing this one, but it also includes the how to use the telescope and everything. And there's a different view for every type of telescope. So binoculars, Newtonians, and refractors as well.
And this is one where I literally cannot even plug anything from the rest because John's book is so good and it covers so much, and we just really don't have a competing document that's that good. So John's books are really great. They're really helpful. We have other options as well in terms of you can buy a gift membership that comes with a couple different books. There's a new book coming out by Nicole Mortellaro, which I'll plug as well.
Oh yeah.
She's a RASC member and she's a CBC journalist, and she's writing, or she has already written, it's already out for pre-order, a 2021 almanac. So it kind of sits in terms of experience level for those of you who are new and find the Observer's Handbook, which I don't have near me, to be really overwhelming. This is a really good option because it simplifies stuff down and it gives you just the basic need to know things. So let me find her book.
Yep. And she was the consultant on some of my books. The publisher actually hired her without even consulting me to make sure that I was legitimate, which is pretty funny.
It's so funny. Oh, I love it. Okay, so there's Nicole's book. I'll send the link out in the chat as well. So that's another great option if you're looking for something for folks, for family or friends. There you go. And I'm sure I had one other thing to plug, but that's okay. Anyway, all the information is there. Our next, I'll reveal a little bit more about our upcoming possibilities where you may want to buy John's book. When we're looking forward into March, April of next year, and we plan on having another observing program to run. Actually, John, I may have told you about this, but regardless, we really enjoyed running Explore the Universe. It's been really fun so far. We do still have one more session, so don't leave us yet. But once we're done, we had it all packed into 10 sessions where you could complete everything. So starting in March, we had thought about doing a spring, summer ETU again. But we wanted to do something that could cater to city observers as well. Because I know that this has been kind of frustrating for some city observers where you go outside and you're like, I can't see half the things that you're talking about. And yeah, you can plan a trip to go out into the dark and that's great, but not everyone can do that right now, et cetera, et cetera. So our plan for March is to do something around Explore the Moon, which will let us see all the details on the moon. I love the moon. I think it's a great target.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, me too.
You wrote a whole book on it, so obviously you agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fantastic target. It's accessible because you can see it from the city. There's a binocular version of the program and there's a telescope version of the program. The only difference is that, of course, you can follow along. But if you want to get the pin, so if you finish all of the Explore the Universe targets, you can get a pin and a certificate that says that you saw stuff in space. With Explore the Moon, you only get that pin if you're a telescope observer, and you do have to be a RASC member. So if you want the pin itself, then you have to be a RASC member. Mm-hmm. But you can still follow through on the observing program and check out stuff on the moon. So that's our plan. We will post about it on social media once we know more, but that will be early to mid-spring. And once we get that going again. All right, I think I've plugged everything that I wanted to plug.
Yeah. Well, I could show some. We were talking about ASI Air, and I've got a bunch of pictures that I took on my phone from just live streaming stuff.
Sure.
So check it out.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that.
Oh,
so wow. I think that's a piece of North America nebula. So this again they're probably just 60-second exposures. And then we've got a veil.
That's cool.
And this is from downtown Halifax. So more veil. Let's see. So you can see my setup. Well, my setup's a little over complicated for what we're doing here, but there's taking the flats. So you do you sort of do your calibration ahead of time, and that way when you're when you take the light frames, the ones you're ready to show the public, it does the stacking calibration for you so that they show up right away, which is kind of
Very
cool.
cool.
Yeah, and so that's that.
I have been woefully ignoring the YouTube chat, and I apologize because I was busy doing Stellarium things. I'll send you all the link. I had someone mention what happened to Julie, who used to host this. I'm pretty sure I've always hosted it. I don't know. If there's a Julie imposter, it might be Julie Balduc Duval who hosts Discover the Universe. So if you're thinking of Julie Balduc Duval, she hosts a program called Discover the Universe, which is for teachers. And it's how to teach astronomy in the classroom. So that might be the Julie you're thinking of. Yeah. Okay. I think that's everything. Thank you all for joining us.
Sure. Do you have anything else? I guess 2 announcements. So I have on my YouTube page, I have the astronomy challenge. So every 3 days I release a video. And so we're at video 21 right now. And the first 21 videos are all no telescope, no binocular required. So it's a lot of the stuff that Jenna and I've been talking about, learning the constellations, observing, events, and seeing the planets and all that stuff. Videos 22 and 23, so one will come out tomorrow and then the other one will come out on Monday. Those 2 videos are longer videos. So one of them's like maybe 10 minutes, the next one's 12. And the first one is how to use a telescope, step by step, sort of all the idiosyncrasies of how you use a telescope to observe the night sky, setting up, aligning the finder to the telescope, and so on. And then using binoculars. So I actually went out and bought a bunch of binoculars, types I didn't have already. And so I show you how to use each of the types of binoculars, down to the nearest detail. So again, that's on Learn to Stargaze on my channel, and one will go out tomorrow and one will go out on Monday. So look forward to those.
Self-promo.
Yeah, but I mean, they're helpful because if you're struggling with that, like seeing stuff with the telescope in the night sky, or having trouble seeing stuff with binoculars, that might be the kind of really, step-by-step advice that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I will also, I promise this will be the last thing that I plug, but we had a star party on Tuesday. John was even there, and we looked at Mars. Yeah, it was a good time. So if anyone wants to so we got to see Mars live, thanks to Eric Briggs, who's one of our board members. And we had a couple videos of Mars as well. And we had an amazing speaker. Her name is Erin, and she's a PhD student at McGill, and she's studying microbial life on Mars. So fantastic talk. I'll link that in the chat and on our YouTube video as well.
That's not the coolest part though. She is a certified Mars rover driver now. So when Percy lands, Perseverance, in 4 or 5 months now, she is one of the people that will tell it where to go.
Which is so cool. So we may very well have her back to tell us how those driving lessons went. Yeah. And she's just generally very cool in terms of the stuff. Like it's all stuff that if you're used to looking at that age of the Earth kind of I don't want to say it's calendar timeline that shows you all the different eras. She has one of those for Mars and talks about all the different eras that Mars went through as well.
Yeah,
so
it really puts it into perspective. And her life goal is to help put people on Mars. And I think that's really, really cool. So that's something I've been following a lot recently. I'm a member of the Explore Mars community down in the States. And it's really neat that there's probably 10,000 people in the world right now working on getting humans to Mars. And most people don't realize that. And there's a whole amazing world out there of architects working on Martian, designing Martian colonies. There's all sorts of botanists working on how to grow food on Mars. It's just, there's a whole Mars world out there to explore, from Earth. And there's actually lots of opportunities to talk to these people. Webinars like this, but that are just all about Mars, whether it's the Mars Society or Explore Mars out of Washington, DC, and because they're all, hosting sessions just like this, and it's really fun to sort of like get involved and see what everyone's doing.
For sure. So I hope you all had a nice time observing Mars last week and the week before when it was at closest approach, and at opposition. Still looks good for another couple weeks if you do want to go and take a look at it.
Yeah. I still need to get a better picture because my pictures, I'm just teaching myself how to do it. My first one was I left the light pollution filter on and I didn't notice because my screen settings weren't adjusted. And so I posted it to Twitter and it was green.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's rough.
I'm getting better though. So here's my latest.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, not too
Nice.
bad. But
Alrighty, so we'll wrap up for now. But send us what you would like us to cover again for our last session, which will be in 2 weeks. And we'll get a survey together to see how you all felt about the program, see how much you got to observe, and what kind of stuff you might like coming up. We've had great fun hanging out with you all. I know I'm making this sound like the last one. I swear it's not. We do have one more, but I'm just, yeah, it's sad to see it coming to an end. Thank you, everybody who has joined us as well today and in general. And we will see you all in 2 weeks.
absolutely. There's your cat.
Did he jump? Oh, yeah, there's my kitty.